My name is Judith Shaver, and the topic I chose to research more in depth was printing in Song China. Okay, so centuries before Johannes Gutenberg invented the printing press, the Song dynasty had already revolutionized printing and began to develop technology for printing long before what many people are taught to be when printing started. So the first kind of printing that was invented was woodblock printing, which was first developed in the Tang dynasty. And this is described in chapter 5 of the textbook, and I included a quote, but it includes a description of one of the world's oldest printed book, the Diamond Sutra, from 868. And basically, woodblock printing involved putting pictures and symbols on wooden blocks, inking them, and then pressing them onto paper. Here are some examples of woodblock printing. In the top left of the screen, you can see a printing woodblock. And on the bottom right of the screen, you can see an example of how the woodblock printing looked on paper. This specific one and this also the printer were both found at the National Palace Museum in Taiwan from Asia for Educators. And yeah. Okay, so printing continued to spread and was usually very prevalent in the Song dynasty, and it helped expand the educated class, and it ended up bringing down the price of books as well, which also was found from the textbook in chapter 8. Some results of the invention of printing included more publishers printing in huge editions, and works both in medicine and other research fields, as well as Buddhism and Confucianism being more avidly consumed. So, following woodblock printing, in the 11th century, Bi Sheng invented a movable type printing. And basically, movable printing meant that there was one piece of type for each character. Okay, so here is an example of movable type printing, and the specific blocks that you see in the top left of your screen is bronze movable type blocks. And at the bottom right of the screen, you can see how all of these bronze blocks would be together in like an assembly of them, and you could select which ones you wanted to use to write a certain word. And also, both of these are found at the National Palace Museum in Taiwan. So I wanted to find a primary source to kind of describe how movable type was invented and kind of to show the way society received it and the effects it had on everything. So I found a description of the invention of movable type in Shin Kyo's Dream Pool Essays. So on the right, I have the translated source, which was found on Wikipedia. And I just wanted to highlight some of the things in it. He formed each character and then would bake each movable type printing block and would set each block together to form a word. And he would use heating and fire. And the author comments on how quick this process was. And yes, he kind of comments on how rapidly this spread and how it really improved efficiency. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the effects of printing in Song China and compare it to European printing. One thing I really wanted to highlight in this project was how a commonly held Western view is that the Europeans invented printing, but there's actually, clearly, Song China printing came long before printing in Germany, and yes. So the main uses of printing was to reinforce state legitimacy and ideology, especially through the civil service exam, which was one of the things that we really studied this summer session in this class. And printing, the invention of printing made this more of a widespread thing, and it was able to really reinforce the civil service examination, because by printing it, they could all be the same for everyone. So a few differences as opposed to Europe printing. Printing was not as author-centered in China, and so private printers didn't have legal rights of their works, which is what copyright is in our day and in Europe. And this is because of the cultural view of writing, and the cultural view of many things in China is more of a shared intellectual society. So a printed work would be more viewed as a public contribution as opposed to someone's property. And a lot of times there'd be intertextuality between different printed works. So, I mean, the main point of this is that different societies clearly shape technology in different ways, and I think that this has affected the belief of many people that printing first came from Europe, because the ideas of copyright and things like that first came from Europe, but printing, the technology of printing, was first developed in Song China. Okay, and then finally, I have a primary source of some examples of questions in a civil service exam. Civil service exams, as I mentioned earlier, were a very important concept in the Song dynasty, and new printing technology made them more widespread and easier to administer. So I've attached what I could find of a translation of a civil service exam, and it's basically just some of the questions and the answers that were given, and I think it is a little broken up since it's translated to English, but you can see that they ask, what do you think about these matters? They would give them different political questions and problems, and would ask them what they think of the matters, and it also included some of the answers that people wrote. So yeah, I'll leave this up for a second. And then here's my works cited page. Thank you.